Almost in every video, I'll get comments about my opinions on some random jungle champion. What do you think of X jungler Stonewall, and so on. Sometimes I'd strangely get this comment for a champion the video is actually about. Needless to say, it's difficult to catch them all and a bit tiresome to repeat it since not everyone reads the comments, so people keep asking the same questions. I figure I might as well do a very quick rundown on every jungle champion to an extent. I'll be giving up an opinion on every jungler in less than a minute, maximum for each one is 30 seconds. Aatrox. Changes to the jungle have warped his capabilities each time they happened. He has qualities that junglers would want, such as a gap closer and sustain, but an item dependence so extreme that it hurts him as a jungler. He is totally usable as one, but he is a perfect example of the idea that you could have picked a ton of better choices. Akali technically is capable of clearing, but otherwise she isn't worth it. I would even recommend jungle Diana over her. She's pretty trashy. Alistar is nearly unusable as a jungler. His ganking is still technically strong, but everything else is so laughably weak you struggle to achieve anything. He's a shadow of what he used to be in Season 2. Amumu is one of the best junglers for carrying all the way to Diamond, where you finally start seeing opposition. Ironically, he's one of the easiest champions to understand and play, but he can be difficult to make succeed because of his numerous counters, which in turn also ends up making him better in the hands of inexperienced players. Even so, I highly recommend most players learn him, and he's a great beginner's champion. Blitzcrank is purely for cheesy fun, but otherwise trash tier. I occasionally play him because he's enjoyable, so if you want to have fun with friends, go ahead. Cho'Gath is one of the best junglers in terms of efficiency, but his reliance on the meta keeps him from seeing play often. He makes a resurgence as a laner in some metas and as a jungler in others. He is super devastating versus combo champions, and as such excels in metas in which they're prominent. He can't initiate for shit, so he's mostly used as a bodyguard or a bruiser, and sometimes occasionally as a mage. Diana was an attempt by Riot to make a workable AP jungler, but she turned out much better in lane and got her jungle dumped on as a result. Her jungle clearing is great, and she has good sustain, but she has awful ganks pre-6, and while they do get better, her ganks at level 6 aren't spectacular in comparison to others. She's still a carry champion, so while she's a low tier jungler, she could still technically snowball and carry hard. Still, players good at Diana can make an easy transition to the jungle playing her. Dr. Mundo is one of the most gold efficient junglers in the entire history of the game. He's rather meta dependent, and when he crops up he's usually in top lane now. Still, he's strong versus melee teams, and he's great in poke compositions, as he's uniquely one of the few junglers with actual poke. He's also one of my favorite junglers. Echo is the perfect example of what an AP jungler needs to be in order to work in the jungle, but also sadly an example of over-design in League of Legends. There's also a bit of irony to Echo in that he works so well as an AP jungler, but his tank build is far better either way. This doesn't apply if you're tank Echo, but as AP Echo you're very kill reliant, so if you don't get gold you probably won't achieve very much. Elise is also an AP jungler, but one of a far different design. She's more of a fighter assassin with magic qualities. That said, she's a very one-dimensional champion and often devolves into just being a stun bot. Regardless, that stun is enough to carry games. She's currently one of the most powerful junglers and likely always will be unless she gets super nerfed like she was before. I recommend learning her, although I think she's not very fun to play. Evelynn is the red-headed stepchild of League of Legends. If you want to play her, you have to be prepared to have to play her as AP, tank, AD, on-hit, or whatever within the same meta, as Riot constantly fucks with her numbers. She can carry and dominate games, but she can also get crushed and be completely useless. I don't recommend her to anyone who hasn't at least learned how to read lanes and gank with limited tools. Fiddlesticks is a rather doomed champion in that whenever he dominates he just gets nerfed with no compensation. The fact that he can jungle was a fluke that occurred in Season 0, but he's been one of the most classic junglers since then. Aside from AoE compositions, he doesn't really have a place in most compositions, yet he can readily destroy any team if he drops in one fight or gank properly. There are no direct comparisons to him, so learning him can be difficult. Still, he can carry fast and hard, and that might be all you need in solo queue. Lane Fizz is infinitely better than Jungle Fizz. He's technically doable, but super reliant on setup and actually killing targets, or else he falls behind tremendously. He does have 2 gap closers which help towards ganks, and his ultimate is a strong ganking tool too, but the jungle slows him down so much that his ganks are far weaker than they should be. Still, he can carry games, and if you like Fizz and are good with him, I don't see the problem in playing him. Jungle Galio is a thing, just not a very good thing. Gragas used to be an assassin jungler, and yeah, that's actually true. Used to be an AP jungler, a bruiser jungler, and now a tank jungler. He's an accidental jungler that has always had some form of jungle potential, and he's currently one of the best junglers in the game. He has tons of tools to control teamfights, moderate jungle clearing prowess, and insanely powerful ganks, and an ultimate so versatile it's ridiculous. He'll always be useful in some fashion, so he's a great investment as a jungler. S tier material consistently. I strongly do not like jungle Hecarim. He becomes prominent only when he's obscenely dominant, but otherwise he doesn't achieve much as a jungler. He's snowball dependent and his jungle tools are very limited. From the jungle he's basically a win more type of champion. Still though, I have to acknowledge that his damage is pretty high once it gets going. Like Blitzcrank Heimerdinger's trash tier, but really funny to play. Can't say much about him, but people enjoy using him here and there. There are advocates for jungle Irelia, but they're all rather delusional. She has a steep gold requirement that cripples her jungling dreams, and she's not a good jungle farmer for the early phases. Her stun slow is not enough to make up for this. Please don't jungle Irelia. Jarvan is one of the manliest champions, one of the most aggressive junglers in the entire game who tends to dominate the jungle during assassin metas and dive metas. He's also one of the most build versatile champions. Ironically, he gets beaten by a lot of champions in straight out fights, but he can achieve more than most of them in skirmishes or team fights. He's all about the group combat. I highly recommend you learn to play him. As Jax, you'd expect a champion that has a lot of tools a jungler would want to be a good jungler, right? Sadly, Jax's steep gold requirements keep him from being too competitive as a jungler, and his build being difficult to alter within the game is a weakness as well. Even if you're good as Jax, you might find yourself starved in a lot of games. He can definitely carry, but you might find yourself in a lot of games where you just get shut down. Karthus is not really functional anymore, and he's mostly just cheesy, but he's also one of the most fun junglers to play. You have global presence each time your ultimate is up, and it allows you to cheese your gold from the jungle. His passive allows him to contribute even when dead, so you can forego the tankiness most junglers have to get and just build pure damage. Kayle is usually an overrated jungler. She's a champion that will only see play when something is released that she can exploit aggressively. When ranked among her peers, she comes short in pretty much everything except in damage and scaling. That allows her to snowball if given the chance, but other than that, she's mediocre. Kha'Zix is one of the best assassin junglers in the game. He's prone to meta shifts just like other assassins, so he tends to drift in and out of relevancy. His evolutions make him versatile, which allows him to alter his gameplay as needed in-game. He's definitely a great pick if you need someone for damage and killing potential, and he can snowball the hell out of the game. Lee Sin is one of the gods of jungling. Very mobile, very powerful, and very dominant. A less experienced player can technically play him, but it takes a very skilled player to slaughter entire enemies. His late game success, but he can shut down games before they even get to that point. There are advocates for jungle Leona, but honestly she's just terrible in the jungle. She's painfully slow and her ganking is not enough to make up for it. You could probably pick any other ganking jungler and do better. Malphite is jungling's B student. He's super straightforward and has godlike initiation. He won't be getting chosen competitively as a jungler unless the game slows down a bit, as his pre-6 ganks are really weak. Even so, there are a lot of champions that contest him for his spot right now. He's still very strong against attack speed reliant champions though. Maokai is a tree, so he belongs in the jungle. That said, his jungling prowess has become less relevant as other champions squeeze him out and his top lane is potent. He has a lot of tools that make him a strong jungler, and he's useful against a lot of compositions. Even if he isn't picked as a jungler anymore, his capabilities are still some of the best. What holds him back is that he can't carry that well, so he relies on his teammates to do it for him. Master Yi is an insanely fast jungle farmer, and he's also insanely fast at dying too. He's a jungle carry, but the problem with such junglers is that their gold requirement is often unrealistic, and they are prone to just dying anyways. He can destroy games if left unchecked though, so just make sure not to pick him into a hard counter. Nasus used to be a god level jungler and was insanely overpowered. His jungling capabilities have since then plummeted. Even so, the amount of value he generates from his abilities is astronomical. Sadly, it is not enough to help him carry games anymore, and the range nerf to his W from a long time ago hurt him hard. He's still a guilty pleasure to play every now and then though. Nautilus is now relegated to a support. He has had such a troubling history because each jungle change hurts him hard. He's one of the game's deadliest gankers and biggest teamfight powerhouses, but he's so slow in the jungle and prone to getting murdered by other junglers that he's hard to unleash. In his current state, I don't recommend playing him if your experience with low safety non-carry junglers is low. Nidalee has probably replaced Dr. Mundo for a spot in a kite poke team. She's an average level jungler with high sieging potential. She's an excellent champion for compositions or metas that focus on that, but in other situations she's likely to struggle. Still, her mobility allows her to pressure tons of points in the map that it can be used to secure games and even snowball. Nocturne is a classic jungler who was designed to be the epitome of ganking, but now he's since been overshadowed by others. His kit is far too fair in comparison to the rest and needs a touch-up. He can still carry and swing games, but the weaknesses in comparison to others is evident. Everyone hates Nunu. He's a god-level control jungler, but unfortunately the game has evolved into something that makes control junglers like him less potent. Solo invasions aren't as strong as before, map control isn't as easy to achieve as before, and so on and so forth. He can still delete certain champions though, so there's that. He's just not as useful as he used to be though. Olaf is a guilty pleasure champion that can sure as hell destroy certain team compositions. He lacks mana, he's gold dependent, and can be easily kited without his ultimate, but still, against CC heavy teams, he's gonna walk all over them. So in short, against some compositions he's god, and against most others he's just okay. Pantheon's ganking is unfair as hell, but luckily it is kept in check by his abysmal everything else. He's snowball dependent, but he can fuck people up. Play him in super aggressive early team compositions, and try to win before he gets to late game. Very not recommended for passive players. Poppy is a very overrated jungler. She just doesn't have the tools to compete with other junglers. She can win games because she's a hyper carry, but that requires her to get fed, which most of the time you would win at that point anyways, or for the game to drag on to like 40 minutes. So basically, if you're winning as Poppy, you would have likely won with anyone else too. Rammus is not as strong as he used to be, and each season gets worse for him. He definitely needs a touch-up badly. He simply can't do very much anymore, and he's sadly a tank that relies on gold more than the others. Rek'Sai is a god tier level jungler that is often overrated. I say overrated because two of her skills seem out of place and one of them is purely win more. Still, her damage and tankiness are ridiculous and her map mobility is powerful. She's basically a brute force type of champion that works out well. I do recommend you play her, but she's right now pretty expensive and not very fun for a lot of people to play. Rengar is one of the junglers I strongly do not recommend to people because the champion itself requires skill and knowledge to pull off. As a jungler, he doesn't have a lot of redeeming qualities and his ganking pre-6 is not flawless. However, his ganking with his ultimate is destructive enough that pulling it off successfully is enough to carry games. Sejuani is probably one of the best recent examples of Riot shitting on the champion for no reason. Sejuani was definitely strong with Cinderhulk and strong without it prior to its release. She was nerfed and then the Cinderhulk was nerfed, thus she was doubly nerfed, but she never received compensation, so now she's weaker than she was before. Her ultimate is still one of the best initiations in the game, but I feel the rest of her kit is very lackluster and not enough to make up for her weak early game now. Shaco is one of the dumbest junglers in the game, but fuck, he can carry hard. He feels unfair, but he actually is pretty fair. There is counterplay to him and there are exploitable weaknesses. It's just that solo queue is full of ham sandwich level players that he just eats them all up. He's a low tier jungler that can carry hard as he scales with the carelessness of his enemies. Shen's infinite jungling still exists, but it's not really relevant or has been relevant since season 1. He's super slow, although he's super sustained as well. His ultimate gives him global presence, but its cooldown is restrictive. He's mostly for fun, but can function against super slow teams. I don't really recommend him, but if you like Shen, I guess you can play it. There is not much to say about Shyvana except that all she does is farm and then hit people with a sack of gold. She's all about farming relentlessly and obtaining as much gold as possible and only goes for kills in passing. Still though, she's very good at farming, and she can win games just by being higher level and having more gold than everybody else. Sion's nerfs really fucked him up. He used to be one of my go-to bruiser tank junglers, but he feels so uncomfortable to use now. Still, his clearing is strong as hell, his ganking pre-6 is pretty bad, but doable, and his ultimate allows for some ridiculous gank initiations. To be honest though, I don't think he'll ever really make it as a jungler. He'll probably just be in top lane at all times. Skarner's latest rework is troubling. It didn't really solve anything except giving him a minigame to play. He was already nerfed and he's falling out of grace quickly, to the point where I'm not even seeing picks or bans for him. The stun to his attacks after nailing people with a laser is neat, but it's basically a wonkier, oodier bear stun. I've pretty much lost hope in the whole idea that Skarner can be reworked properly. Tam is a fat ball of stats that's really annoying to play against. I don't think his jungling is troubling as he probably can't carry, and I don't think he's a good jungler either, but he's a very cheesy one when picked. He can shove other junglers out of their jungle simply because he's hard to kill. He can pull off dumb shit by just walking up to people because targeting him tends to be pointless. He's just cheesy, but in solo queue, cheese wins. How the fuck did that guy make it to Masters as Jungle Teemo? Trundle is the first champion designed to be a jungler from the get-go. He's also one of League's debuffer champions, which is a rare label to have. He's a super strong duelist and can be great in team compositions that rely on kiting and poking, and he's strong against one-tank teams. With that said, he's not picked often or considered because his carrying potential is minimal. He's more defensive than he is offensive, and his abilities are mostly just setup that don't achieve anything alone. Tryndamere is the same as Master Yi, except more RNG based. Not much to say about him. Udyr is a very popular jungler who is often overrated. He's in serious need of a rework, but he will likely never get one. There are a few metas that would accommodate him, and even in those, there are champions who will likely perform better, such as Shyvana. He can carry solo queue though, but that's mostly through cheesing the game. His mana pool keeps him down, unlike his counterparts, Shyvana and Dr. Mundo. The game has just evolved beyond what a champion like him can deal with, at least competitively. Vi is a very one-dimensional champion, but that one trick she does is really strong. She packs a punch and her ultimate is basically a guaranteed catch on someone. She's incredible during assassin metas and dependent on her team composition and others. She's a champion that can carry solo queue, so I would recommend her as someone to consider picking. Volibear is a champion in desperate need of a touch-up. He's strong in tank metas, but even then there are tons of other tanks still outclassing him. He's a god tier bodyguard, but that's not enough to make up for his lack of other combat capabilities. He's just not very useful in his current state. Warwick is also in a desperate need of a rework. He's easy to play and can snipe people with his ultimate, so he can still win games, but oftentimes he'll just get worked around. He's simply too slow of a champion. Wukong's never been about his jungling. He's not a good jungler in the sense of clearing or even ganking, but he does deal a lot of damage. When that damage is great and can be consistently expected, Wukong becomes a pick that destroys teams with his ultimate. In times where his health in games is not expected, it's just better to pick other champions. Xin Zhao is an interesting jungler in that he can win games hard and lose them just as hard. He's a super snowbally champion who can be played tanky to deal damage. He's easy to play at least, so he's good for new players. His lack of disengage makes him very risky, and what he contributes isn't more than other alternatives, so there currently isn't much of a reason to pick him. Yorick is surprisingly one of the most powerful junglers for the clearing aspect of the game. He can cheese objectives and is super hard to kill, but his ganks are weak and his mana sustain is atrocious. He requires a lot of gold to get going, and even then only becomes a revive bot for your actual carry. He's interesting, but there's no real actual reason to pick him. Zac is a jack of all trades type of jungler who falls behind on certain aspects. He has a great setup and a few bad matchups, but the thing is, his problem is that he's too slow. His damage is sustained, so he can't kill things fast. His initiation often requires a long channel, the charge and then the launch, and he's not very mobile without his slingshot. Still, he's a very safe jungler to play and learn. It's just unfortunate he's very expensive to actually get. Zed used to be really great in the jungle, but now it's just gimmicky. You can still do it for sure, but don't expect miracles. Jungle Zyra used to be possible, but it was gimmicky back then, and now it's just nearly impossible. This channel is supported by my sponsors, Crunchyroll, Pro Build Systems, and Loot Crate. Check out the description below for links to the websites. Signing up for any trials, including Crunchyroll's free anime trial, greatly supports my channel. Also remember to give the video a like to support the channel and subscribe if you haven't yet.